You don't tell anyone. That's the first thing. The wire clears at 2:47 in the afternoon on a Thursday, and you are 35 years old, and you have exactly 1 bar of signal, and you stand there in your kitchen reading the number 3 times because your brain refuses to process it as real. 2.9 billion. You read it again. You set the phone down. You wash a glass that was already clean. The feeling you've been running toward your whole life doesn't show up. You've been here before, just never with this much money. You grow up in a house where money isn't discussed. It's managed, quietly, carefully, and always behind closed doors. Your dad drives a refrigerated delivery truck for a grocery chain. He leaves at 4:30 in the morning and comes home smelling like cold air and diesel. He doesn't complain. Complaining costs something he doesn't have. Your mom works the front desk at a chiropractic office, 26 hours a week, just under the threshold that would require the practice to offer her benefits. That's not an accident. She's known it for years. She never says anything about it because saying something would mean looking directly at it, and looking directly at it means deciding what to do about it. And no version of that conversation ends well on a Tuesday night with 2 kids and a mortgage that's 3 years underwater. So instead, the house runs on a system. The system has no name. You learn it by watching. Rent gets paid the day it's due, not before, because the 11 days it sits in checking earns something. Not much, but something. The credit card gets paid to zero every month, not because your parents understand credit utilization, but because debt feels like a thing that grows when you're not looking, and they've seen what it does to people they know. The grocery shopping happens on Wednesdays, 2 days before the weekly circular resets, because your mom knows which markdowns hit on which days at which stores. This is not couponing. This is a kind of expertise for which nobody gives you a credential. You are 11 years old, and you are absorbing all of it. You wear the same 4 shirts on a weekly rotation, and you get good at spacing them out so nobody notices the pattern. You don't go to Jordan Pfeiffer's birthday party in 6th grade because it's at one of those entertainment centers where you pay per activity. Your parents give you $20 and you do the math in the car and realize that $20 won't cover the go-karts, the arcade tokens, the pizza, and the look on your face when you can't afford the next round. So, you tell Jordan you have a thing. You don't have a thing. The school trip to Washington, D.C. costs $340. You never ask. What you learn from all of this isn't poverty exactly. It's the specific weight of a life lived just below the line where things get easier. You're not going hungry. There's food in the fridge, the heat works, and nobody's getting evicted. But there's this permanent low hum underneath everything, this constant background frequency of not quite enough, and you grow up so used to it that you stop hearing it as a sound. It just becomes the air. Your dad gets passed over for a route supervisor position he's been informally doing for 8 months. The guy they hire has a cousin in regional management. Your dad finds out on a Friday. He comes home, eats dinner, watches television, and goes to bed. He doesn't throw anything. He doesn't raise his voice. He just accepts it with the quiet resignation of a man who learned a long time ago that the system has its own logic and that logic was never written with him in mind. You are 16 and you watch him do this and something cracks open in your chest. Not anger, exactly. Something colder than anger. Something more useful. Because in that moment, sitting across from him at a table with a wobbly leg that's been propped up with a folded piece of cardboard for 2 years, you understand something that nobody handed you and nobody taught you. The ceiling your family keeps running into isn't made of talent or effort or character. It's made of access, of information, of knowing which doors exist before you need to walk through them. And right then, quietly, without telling anyone, you decide you're going to learn where the doors are. That decision doesn't feel like a turning point. It feels like a thought you have after dinner on a Friday night. But it is the whole thing. The decision is easy. The decade that follows it is not. You are 18 when you leave for state school on a Pell Grant and 2 subsidized loans that total $6,800 for the year. You pick the cheapest meal plan. You calculate one time what buying a coffee every morning would cost you compounded over 4 years at a modest return rate, and you never buy a coffee on campus again. Not once. Your roommate thinks you're cheap. You don't correct him because explaining the math would take longer than it's worth, and also because you're not entirely sure he'd understand it, and you're even less sure you'd be able to say it without it sounding like an accusation. You graduate with a logistics degree and $34,000 in debt, and you take the first job that offers health insurance. It's a supply chain coordinator role at a mid-sized distribution company outside Columbus. $47,000 a year. You put $200 a month into your 401k because someone in HR mentions the company matches up to 3% and you're not leaving free money on the table. You share an apartment with two other people. Your bedroom fits a full-size bed and a desk and not much else. On weeknights, you stay up until 1 a.m. reading about freight routing inefficiencies and last-mile delivery costs because you've noticed something at work that nobody above you seems to be paying attention to, and you're starting to think the gap between what the software does and what it could do is actually a business. You leave at 24 to build it. This is the first time you understand what fear actually feels like in your body. Not the low hum from childhood, something sharper, something that lives behind your sternum and wakes you up at 5 a.m. for no reason. Your savings at the time of leaving, $11,200. By month 8, you have $3,400 left and one client who's considering canceling. You take a part-time logistics consulting gig to cover rent, and you work on the product at night and on weekends and during your lunch breaks, sitting in your car in a parking garage because the consulting office is too loud and your apartment has no air conditioning and it's July in Ohio and heat makes it hard to think. You eat a lot of rice, not because you can't afford other things, but because the mental energy of deciding what to eat feels like a luxury you can't afford right now. The client doesn't cancel. By year 3, you have 4 clients, 1 employee, and a product that works better than anything else in your specific niche, which is a niche nobody else thought was worth building for. You raise a small seed round, $800,000. The wire hits your business account, and you stare at it for a long time, and then you go back to work because the number doesn't feel real, and the work does. At 28, a serious relationship ends. She isn't wrong about why. You were there, but you weren't present. There's a difference. She named it clearly and fairly, and you didn't have a good argument because she was right. You take 2 days, then you go back to work because you don't know what else to do with the feeling, and the company needs a Series A deck finished by Friday. Year 6. You almost run out of runway. Payroll is due on a Thursday, and the bridge funding hasn't cleared. You spend 72 hours making phone calls, sending emails, and sitting very still in a conference room at 11 p.m., waiting for a callback that may not come. It comes. At 12:47 a.m., you don't celebrate. You send the payroll file, sitting there in the dark for a while, and then you drive home. At 32, the doubt hits differently than it did at 24. At 24, the doubt was loud, almost energizing in its own way. At 32, it's quiet. It sits with you at breakfast. It doesn't argue. It just asks, very calmly, whether the people who stayed were actually smarter than you, whether the mortgage, the weekends, and the ordinary comfort your old roommate has now is actually the more honest answer. You don't have a good response. You just keep going, because stopping now would mean the decade meant nothing, and you are not ready to believe that yet. The acquisition conversation starts in September. A logistics conglomerate out of Atlanta has been watching your growth numbers for 18 months. Their VP of corporate development reaches out through a mutual contact. Casual at first, the kind of email that's written to sound like it isn't what it is. You've been through enough by now to know exactly what it is. You forward it to your attorney and you wait 3 days before responding. Not because you're playing a game, but because you've learned that the first person to show urgency in a negotiation is the first person to lose ground in one. The process takes 5 months. There are 3 rounds of due diligence, 2 trips to Atlanta, 1 moment in a conference room on the 41st floor where their lead counsel raises something that almost collapses the whole deal. You sit very still and say very little, letting your attorney handle it, which is what you're paying her for. You've stopped performing composure by now. You've actually developed it. The final number is $2.9 billion. Your attorney calls you on a Wednesday evening to confirm the wire schedule. You write down the date on a post-it note and stick it to your monitor. Thursday, 2 in the afternoon, give or take. You cook dinner that night, pasta. You watch something on television that you won't remember the next morning. You go to sleep at 10:30 and you sleep fine, which surprises you later when you think about it. Thursday comes. You are sitting at your desk at 1:55 p.m. You have a call at 3 that you haven't canceled because canceling it felt too much like tempting something. At 2:11 p.m., your phone buzzes. It's a text from your attorney. 2 words, it cleared. You look at the number in your business account. You look at it for a long time. Your brain does the thing it did when the seed round hit, when the Series A hit, when the first acquisition offer came in at a number that turned out to be a lowball. It refuses to process the figure as real. Only this time, the figure is not $800,000 or $4 million or even the $34 million secondary you took 2 years ago. This time, it's $2.9 billion and your brain simply doesn't have the architecture for it. You set the phone down face up this time. Then, you turn it face down. Then, you stand up and walk to the kitchen, fill a glass of water, and drink it standing at the sink, looking out the window at the parking lot of the building across the street. A man is loading groceries into a Subaru. He's struggling with a bag that's too full, and he keeps trying to find a way to make it fit, and eventually he just puts 3 things in a separate bag and closes the trunk. He has no idea what just happened in your kitchen. The parking lot doesn't know. The building across the street doesn't know. The city doesn't reorganize itself around what just cleared in your account at 2:11 p.m. on a Thursday. It is completely, absolutely ordinary outside. You expected something. Not confetti, not a feeling of invincibility, not the cinematic exhale of a man who's been holding his breath for a decade, but something. Some signal from the universe that the distance you traveled was real, that the relationship you didn't save and the funerals you almost missed and the 72-hour payroll crisis in year 6 and the rice and the parking garage in July actually added up to something that the world would acknowledge in some small, quiet way. The world does not acknowledge it. You finish the glass of water, you rinse it, you put it in the drying rack, you walk back to your desk, and you join the 3 o'clock call 2 minutes early, and you say good afternoon to the 3 people already on the line, and you open your laptop and you do the work, because that's what you know how to do, and for a long time, it's the only thing that still feels like solid ground. The Monday after the wire clears, you have a meeting with a wealth management team. There are 4 of them. They sit across from you in a conference room that smells like leather and climate control. They use words like capital deployment and tax advantage structuring and philanthropic vehicles. They are very calm and very expensive and very good at making you feel like you should already know what they're talking about. You take notes. You ask questions that you can tell slightly surprise them. Afterward, one of them shakes your hand and says, "You're very grounded for someone in your position." And you smile and say thank you. And you don't tell him that grounded is just another word for where you started. By February, you have a security protocol, a PR firm on retainer, an assistant who manages a calendar so dense that your own mother needs a 2-day notice to get 30 minutes with you. You are living inside a structure that was built to protect you, and it does protect you, and it also makes you feel, on certain Tuesday mornings, like you are a very important thing, being stored in a very secure location. Thanksgiving comes. Your sister picks you up from the airport in her 2014 Kia Sorento with the cracked rear bumper she's been meaning to get fixed for 8 months. The heat in the back seat doesn't work on the passenger side. You sit up front. She plays a playlist from 2009 and sings along without any embarrassment. You watch her, and you feel something you don't have a clean word for. Not pity, not nostalgia, something more complicated. Something that lives in the space between loving a person completely and knowing that your daily reality and hers now exist on different planets that happen to share a Thanksgiving table. The table itself is the same, slightly uneven, same as always. Someone has put a folded piece of cardboard under the short leg, the same solution as the one your family used 30 years ago. And when you notice it, you have to look away for a second. Your mom looks older. Not dramatically older, just the specific kind of aging that happens when a person has been carrying low-grade financial stress for 40 years. and the carrying finally starts to show up in the body. You watch her check the price on a container of whipping cream at the grocery store on Wednesday morning, put it back, check it again, and put it in the cart. Currently, grocery prices are running nearly 22% higher than they were 5 years ago. You know this. She knows this differently. You could write a check before dinner that would end every financial concern she will ever have for the rest of her life. You know the number. You've thought about it. You've almost said it out loud 3 times and stopped yourself each time because you understand, in a way that's hard to explain to people who haven't lived it, that money given wrong doesn't just help. It restructures a relationship in ways that can't be undone. It changes what she is to you and what you are to her, and you are terrified of losing the version of her that existed before the wire cleared. So you pay for the groceries, just the groceries. And she says, you didn't have to do that. You say it's nothing, you both know it's not nothing, and neither of you says anything else about it. Back home, your 3 closest friends from your 20s are deep into a different life. Marcus is a high school basketball coach with a daughter in 2nd grade, a mortgage he refinanced last year at 6.8%, and a weekend that actually belongs to him. Priya, just made partner at her firm, bought a house in the suburbs, and is talking about a 2nd kid. Devin is between jobs and stressed about it in the specific way you used to be. Stressed before, the stress became something else entirely. They are not going anywhere. Neither are you. But the space between where you all started and where you each landed has become so wide that sometimes a dinner conversation feels like a phone call with bad reception. You can hear each other. You're just not quite connecting. You stop getting invited to certain things, not because anyone is angry, just because your presence now requires a kind of consideration it didn't used to. People wonder what to wear, where to suggest, whether to split the bill or let you cover it, and whether letting you cover it changes something. The logistics of your friendship have become a thing people have to think about, and people stop doing things they have to think about too hard. You are 35 years old, and you are the wealthiest person anyone in your life has ever personally known, and you have never felt further from the people who knew you when you had nothing. That's not a complaint, it's just the weight of it, and nobody prepared you for how much it would actually weigh. In January, you buy a house in Nashville. Not a compound, not a statement, just a house with a porch and a yard and enough distance from the calendar and the PR firm and the wealth management team that you think maybe you can finally breathe at a normal rate. You take morning walks. You read books that have nothing to do with logistics, cap tables, or market positioning. You sleep 8 hours for the first time in what feels like a decade because it probably has been a decade. You cook breakfast on Tuesdays. You sit on the porch in the afternoon and watch the light change, and you think, okay, this is what it feels like on the other side. This is the part where it gets quiet. The quiet lasts about 6 weeks. It's not that something dramatic happens. Nothing dramatic happens. It's more than you notice one morning over coffee that your mind is already running, already calculating, already scanning for the inefficiency, the gap, the thing nobody else is paying attention to yet. You haven't opened a laptop, you're just sitting there with a cup of coffee and the engine is running anyway, idling at a frequency you've had for so long you stopped hearing it as a sound, the same way you stopped hearing the low hum in your childhood house in Gary. You realize the engine was never about the money. The money was the metric, the proof that the engine was working. But the engine itself was built much earlier, at a wobbly table on a Friday night, watching your dad absorb a defeat that the system handed him like it was inevitable, like it was just the way things were. The engine was built from that, from the specific anger of a 16-year-old who decided very quietly that he was going to learn where the doors were. You solved the financial problem. You solved it completely and permanently, and at a scale your 16-year-old self couldn't have constructed a mental image of. But the engine that drove you there was never running on the financial problem. It was running on something older, something that doesn't check your account balance, something that doesn't know the wire is cleared. So you go back to work, not because you have to, because the alternative is sitting with an engine that has no load on it, and that turns out to be its own kind of unbearable. But something is different now, and it takes you a while to name it. What's different is this. You are not building for survival anymore. You are building for the starting line. Because somewhere in the last decade, between the $3,400 in savings and the parking garage in July and the 72-hour payroll crisis and the glass of water at 2:11 p.m. on a Thursday, you crossed a line that your family has been standing in front of for 3 generations. And crossing it means something specific. It means the kids you might have, the nieces and nephews already here, your sister's daughter who is 7 years old and has your same eyes and has no idea what a Pell Grant is and will probably never need to. It means they start somewhere different. Not easier necessarily, but different, higher. The coffee can is gone, not literally. Your mom probably still has it somewhere, emptied out, shoved to the back of a cabinet. But the function it served, the hiding place, the emergency reserve, the physical symbol of a family that didn't trust the system enough to put its money in one, that's gone. You replaced it, not with a conversation or a lesson or a piece of advice, with a fact, with an irreversible structural change to what your family's baseline looks like. Currently, the median American household has less than $8,000 in liquid savings. The bottom 50% of households hold about 2.5% of total U.S. wealth. Those numbers are the water your family swam in for generations. Your kids will not swim in that water. They will look at an open sky and assume that's how the sky always looked. They will never know the ceiling was there because you made it the floor. That is not a small thing. That is the whole thing. And yet, you are 35 years old, and you are sitting on a porch in Nashville and the engine is running, and you don't know how to turn it off. You're not sure you're supposed to. You're not sure the man who built it, the 16-year-old at the wobbly table, would even recognize a version of himself that could sit still. The wound that drove you here is the same wound that won't let you rest. And you can hold both of those things at once now, the gratitude and the exhaustion, the legacy and the loneliness, the open sky you built for the next generation, and the ceiling you still feel above your own head on certain mornings, even though it isn't there anymore. The financial problem is solved. You just don't know what to do with the person who solved it. You will not remember the exact moment the wire cleared. That surprises you. You'll remember the man loading groceries into the Subaru, the clean glass in the drying rack, the folded cardboard under the table leg at Thanksgiving. The small things carried the weight. They always did. What you understand now, sitting on this porch, is that the engine was never a problem to fix. It was the price of the ticket. You paid it across a decade, in hours and relationships and ordinary Thursdays that nobody will ever see or name or congratulate you for. Your kids will not pay that price. That was the point. But here, on a Tuesday morning with nowhere to be and nothing urgent, you notice the engine is still running, still scanning, still looking for the next door. You gave them the open sky. You just don't know yet who you are without the ceiling.